Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at the MSI GTX680 twin Frozr. I want to say the twin Frozr 3 as well, but anyway, the twin Frozr. Now I'm sure any of the kind of regulars or enthusiasts out there will already know how good that the twin Frozr cooler is. It's also been something that we've always really liked to overclock 3D as well. So to see it on the 680 is kind of a big deal, because basically the 680 did have that tendency to be warm but quiet. So it would be good to see whether the twin Frozr cooler on this can not only remain quiet, which they always were on the other cards previously, but also bring those temperatures down to a decent level as well. So we're quite looking forward to seeing that. Obviously it's a good design, but we'll bring you in for a look. But what I'm going to do is bring you in for a closer look. We'll go into some benchmarks, then into some gameplay, and then we'll wrap up and conclude as we always do right at the very end. But it's time now for me to grab my remote, stop the camera, and bring you in for a closer look. Right then, my lovelies, in for a closer look at the twin Frozr 3. See, I knew there was a 3 there somewhere. It's on there. I knew I wasn't imagining things. Now it's a design that has been the same sort of designs carried across all of the cards, and that's not a bad thing with these, because I think this is probably one of the better looking coolers out there. The fans are deceptively small. I'm just going to stop one quick, because when it's spinning you think it's massive, but the fans are deceptively small, and I really like them as well. When you see them that small compared to some of the other cars that I've got like 2 massive fans or 3 fans on, you never think it's going to work, but it does work exceptionally well, as you'll see later on. Retains the standard 2x6 pin power layout, and as far as I'm aware it's a standard PCB as well, from what I can see anyway, because I've not popped this one off. If I bring the camera in a little bit more just so we can see, like I said, I really do like the design of this card. It's just a shame that you never really get to see much of it, because obviously that's always pointed the other way. I've never kind of understood that, but anyway. And it's essentially just, as far as the connections are concerned, it's a stock 680. There's 2 DVIs on the back, full-size DisplayPort and a HDMI. As you can see, this is on a Rampage 4 Extreme, and it doesn't go off the end of the motherboard, so it's not massively long. I think that's about it really. Specs today will be 3960X at 4.6 GHz as ever. Corsair GTX8 running at 2133. We're still using the H80 at the moment because I'm using the H100s on some other things. Rampage 4 Extreme, and then power is being supplied by an AX 850 watt Corsair unit. All the games will be completely maxed out. Everything that we can possibly get turned up. People ask me every time, have I turn this up? They're all on maximum. They can't turn anything up anymore. So, right. And then the resolutions will always be 1920 by 1080. But anyway, I'm going to rejig the camera again, and it's now time to look at some benchmark results. Well then peeps, onto some benchmarks results, and we'll take a look at the basics, which will be the 3D Mark results. Now on the left hand side we have the MSI twin Frozr card, and on the right hand side I'm comparing it with the Zotac GTX680. Zotac GTX680, but anyway, yeah, the Zotac card. So the MSI as stock got 10,114, and then the Zotac got 10,317, so about 200 points more there. The only thing I can say that is different from the bench rigs is the newer drivers. We're running these on the latest, or we run the MSI on the latest NVIDIA drivers. So maybe the points come down to that. It's about the only thing we can say that's different. But then again, you don't necessarily want to say that the MSI is down to drivers. It could actually still be the card as well. But anyway, they're the scores that we got. So what we'll do is we'll move on quickly to the X scores. So we've got 3,391 for the MSI, and then 3,596 for the Zotac. So again, you're looking at a good 200 points there. Now 200 points for extreme mode is actually quite a big chunk. P, not really that much. Get down to the X's with that sort of score, and that is a fairly hefty difference. Moving on again, we go into 3D Mark Vantage. So we got 38,501 for the MSI, and then 39,273 for the Zotac, and that's with a GPU score on the MSI of 36,320 versus 37,779 for the Zotac. So what you're looking at there, you're looking at well over 1,000 points, nearly 1,400 points difference on the GPU score there. Moving on to the X's. 20,373 with a 19,780 for the MSI, and then 21,323 with a 20,752 for the Zotac. So you GPU score wise, again, you're looking at almost 1,000 points, and that is a fair bit different. So at the moment, comparing them benchmark for benchmark, the Zotac is slightly better, but this is all something that I want to kind of talk to you about in the conclusion, so we need to go on there. But what I'm going to do now is we're going to break on to some gaming, and then, like I said, we'll wrap up with the conclusion at the end. Right then, peeps, first up for the gameplay is Batman. Top left, 54 degrees C, pretty self-explanatory. That is the temperature of the core of the card. 95, 98%, 99 there flicking around, that's the core usage. 43% is the fan usage. It is actually quite warm in here at this present moment in time. Lovely British summer weather. It's actually 24 degrees in the room at the moment. So though that temperature is pretty damn good. Then we've got 1223 megabyte being used, which is the VRAM usage. And then right at the very bottom, we've got 62.1 frames per second. That is, again, pretty self-explanatory. As ever, this is with the game maxed out, VSync off, all that, all the normal kind of stuff. Every game will be completely maxed out, as much as we possibly can do. And also, this is at 1920 by 1080. Right. So as you can see, Batman is, well, always has been pretty badly coded. So the fact that this card is running it, above 50 frames per second, no stuttering, all nice and smooth, easy gameplay, just goes to show you, the kahunas that this card's got, really. Because some cards have a real problem with it, because like I said, it's just quite badly coded. We just started to use our Catwoman just to kind of go with the more kind of perverted side of our PC gaming thing, rather than staring at Batman all the time. At least we got some boobies and some bum to stare at. I think the bedroom gymnastics with that woman would be quite interesting. Anyway, that's enough of me daydreaming. Let's move on to the next game. Moving on to Crysis 2 then. Again, game completely maxed out, and it's still easily chomping through this. One thing I will say though about the card is it's actually remarkably quiet considering those temperatures. Again, it's a really warm day today. There's no kind of massive airflow being pushed over the card where it's not in a case, it's just on top of the normal test bench. and you can't hear the fans at all. I can actually hear the NFF12s on a H80 more. Yes, they are on 12 volts, but it's quite phenomenal how cool that card is. Really is. You can see there we've got nearly 1700 megabyte RAM being used, so well within the 2 gigabyte that the card has available. And then, yeah, healthy, well over 60 frames per second. So even if you had VSync on, do you know what I mean, you wouldn't be seeing dips or anything like that. So it's more than capable. I think personally, especially these single cards with 1920 by 1080 screens, you can almost max everything out and play them comfortably now. It's always worth remembering though that we are running with all the AA maxed out, all the texture settings maxed out. So it's not like with some of you'll notice a lot better frames per second, for argument's sake, if you're only running 1680 by 1050 or something like that. But we are still running full HD resolution. He's not very nice, is he? Kill him, motherfucker! Right then, that's plenty enough for Crysis 2 now. Let's get moving on. Right then peeps, on to Dirt 3, which we're doing the Gymkhana again. And yeah, we're just doing it to kind of mix it up from the racing for a little bit. Obviously this card absolutely ravages Dirt 3. Over 200 frames per second, you can comfortably play this card. Comfortably play this game with 3 screens maxed out and still get more than playable frames per second. But again, we just thought we'd plays. Anyway, yeah, so Steve-O doing the gaming again. He's got to grips with it a little bit better this time. I say a little bit better. It's just me being nice. At least he's not crashed yet. Hey, had to happen someone. One thing you can see is that the video memory this game uses just like nothing. Less than 600 meg pretty much everywhere. Anyway, that's enough of seeing that. Hey, there's another crash! That makes me feel better. I waited for that. Anyway, that's enough. Let's get moving on. Right then, peeps, moving on to Metro. Still at 54, 55 degrees. Fan speed has pretty much stayed at 43% as well. Memory now just under kind of 1300 megabytes. Frames per second has obviously dropped quite considerably because Metro is still a massively intensive game. But it is completely maxed out. If I turn the AA down a bit, the frames per second goes up through the roof. Why have you still got that gun? Oh.
You can change weapons.
I didn't know you could change the weapons. Uh-oh. Anyway, we've stayed really in the 30s. Not really seen 40 frames per second at all. Just as I said it dips up to 40 frames per second. But anyway, stayed around the 30 frames per second as an average with this. But we're getting near the end now, so it's time to move on. Moving on to Witcher. I really don't like this game. It's just really not my type of thing, but we do it because it is so demanding and people do ask for it when we don't put it in the videos. You can see that the fan speed has gone up a little bit. We're up to 47%. That is the game as well. As soon as you change the game to back to like dirt or something, the temperature does drop. And the fan speed drops as well, because you can see that the temperature has now gone up to 60 degrees. So the game does, you know, with this game, does make a difference to the temperatures. There we just saw 38 there, but we're kind of averaging around the 40 frames per second mark with this, which again is still pretty damn good for this game because it is massively demanding. Right then, peeps, that's enough for Witcher now. It's time to move on for the conclusion. Right then, peeps, we're into the conclusion. So what I'm going to do is tell you the award and then I'll kind of explain why, as I always do, kind of standard format. So we're going to give it the Silver Award. Now, the 680, the original 680, we kind of gave the Gold Award because we thought it was brilliant. and it was really good. But then when the aftermarket cards come out, you kind of you expect a little bit more from them. And so far, the aftermarket cards they've been good, but they've not been brilliant. The Gigabyte we gave a bronze award because it didn't really perform that well, in all honesty. And especially when you started to overclock it, the scores dropped off quite quickly to the point where you could overclock it, but you were kind of pushing it too far, and there was a really, really tiny margin that you could actually overclock it and actually get an increase rather than a decrease. The Zotac we gave silver because it was actually a little bit louder than the reference card, but did manage to be cooler. But we're quite quiet freaks here. Now with the MSI, the card is probably the quietest one that we've had yet out of the aftermarket cards. I'd say it was on par with the reference card, but the difference is you're looking at a good 20 degrees difference in temperatures, whereas this kind of didn't really hit 60. The reference card easily was hitting kind of like high 70s, but like I said, remained quiet. So this card has definitely got that cool and quiet kind of nature there. But as you've seen with the performance results, when compared with the Zotac, it kind of fall a little bit behind, which was why I initially, especially when I saw the temperature results, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to be giving this a gold award because it was so cool and quiet. But then when I started to compare the results with the other cards, that's when it kind of just slipped back to a silver. But it's a very well-deserved silver. Still does perform really, really well. You'll get some wicked overclocks out of it. And not being funny, it is really cool and quiet as well. If you're just going to stick it in there and leave it, I'd leave it on auto fan and everything. I really wouldn't mess about with it and just kind of run with it. I'd also go as far as say it's probably the best looking of the aftermarket 680s that I've seen yet. So we're talking Gigabyte, Zotac and this. Definitely I'd say this is the best looking one. Doesn't really go, it's not really that hard when Gigabyte are still using the blue PCB, but do you know what I mean? But anyway, definitely as far as the cooler is concerned, it's brilliant. Also compared to the Zotac, the MSI is only dual slot. Now, when you run an SLI, would never put two cards right next to each other anyway. Dual slot, I would never have that. Even one slot for me is a bit close. With the Rampage, you've got quite a few different options there, where the second one that I would be using is a good 2 slots clear from the top card with like a dual slot cooler. So you get a good, do you know what I mean? You can get a good dual 2 slots in there. Basically, it's where the motherboard's designed to run 4 cards anyway. But yeah, the second slot, that for me would be optimum. And obviously with the Zotac, where it's a 2.5 slot, it kind of makes that a little bit difficult anyway, and it's just that, you know, I mean, it's that little bit closer again, and I'm not necessarily a massive fan of that. I don't necessarily see with the Zotac, considering the cooler was that much bigger, I think it should have been quieter as well, and it didn't. And the MSI just proves that. It's just a normal dual slot design. It's just as cool. If anything, it was a little bit cooler. And by that I mean that on auto fans, the maximum we saw on the Zotac was 59. With the MSI, it was 58. And that's with really warm temperatures at the moment as well. So I think if we tested them, you know, smack bang side by side and did deltas, which is something that I think starting to think now that I need to start doing with the graphics cards, I think that the MSI would have pulled in front. But the fact that the temperatures run a little bit cooler wasn't really enough for me to want to sway over to that gold award. So performance was a little bit less. You could say it was those drivers. Short of retesting the Zotac, which has already gone back to them, there's no real way for me to kind of find out. They were both based on reference boards anyway, so do you know what I mean? We're never really going to know. But if I was going to spend my own personal money, and out of the 3 that I've seen, and by that, like I've said before, Gigabyte, Zotac, MSI, I would buy the MSI. Plain and simple, because like I said, it's a better looking card as far as I'm concerned, and it is much quieter. And nowadays with, you know, technology moving forward and everything like that, I don't think there's any excuse for a slightly noisier card. I know there are going to be people out there that are running like a H100 with the fans on max and, you know, really don't mind. That's completely down to you, but for me, I prefer to tune my systems so that they're quiet. I don't think there's any reason why, you know, without your headphones on and stuff, you shouldn't be able to hear a clock tick on the other side of the room while your PC's on. I can hear. Quite often I've got the bench rig, the server and my main rig on, and I can still hear the tick on my watch. And that for me is the way I think we should be setting our PCs up now. I don't think they should be intrusive. And there's no excuse for it. The technology's there. Everyone's out there making products that if you choose your parts wisely, you can do it. But anyway, that's going massively off topic. The MSI is available in the UK. Arrow have got it for £479.99. The 680s are expensive cards, there's no getting away from it. But if you're in the market for, you know, the big boy single card, like I said, as far as I'm concerned at the moment, the MSI is one of the better aftermarket cards, or one of the better cards with the aftermarket coolers, and that I would thoroughly recommend it. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Hopefully I've kind of explained enough of my thoughts with this card, comparing it to the other cards. But for now at least, with the silver award-winning MSI Twin Frozr 3 overclocked graphics card, this is Tiny Tom Logan with another video for you, out.